The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi everyone, we will be starting promptly at 1 o'clock. Thank you for ensuring that you have muted your device as well as devices that may be near you or around you. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. This is Ashley Koff, registered dietitian. I'm the CEO of the Better Nutrition Program, and I am thrilled that you have chosen to join us today. I am really excited to have a conversation. Many of you are healthcare practitioners. Many of you have also emailed me saying, because of that, you can't attend live today. So while this is a live broadcast and an opportunity to ask questions at the end of myself and my guest, this is also an opportunity for you to listen to it at a better time for you. You may start off listening to it live and something could happen and you need to listen to it later. So you will be getting the link. You also have the opportunity to reach out to me, and if you would like any additional information, I will connect you with either our guest today or any of the relevant parties for resources that we are discussing. In the Better Nutrition Program, my goal is to help people get better health powered by better nutrition. And we're going to talk about the definition of better nutrition, just so we're all working from the same lexicon today. And then we're also going to move into, of course, the topic of today, which is so important for us to understand. And again, I'm just so grateful for you for joining us. So along with that gratitude, I am really grateful to my friends at MegaFood who have also sponsored this podcast and have allowed me to have a conversation with our guest, who I will introduce in a moment. Their sponsorship, as you will learn as we go throughout the webinar, is actually because we want to take this opportunity to explain a process that they went through, the glyphosate residue-free certification through the Detox Project. And when I first learned about it, I had a lot of questions. So I have the opportunity today to ask our guest all of those questions. But I am also hoping that I can learn from you, from any questions that you may have as a consumer, as a retailer who is interested in this, as someone who's involved in regulatory, and of course, as my colleagues who are also healthcare practitioners. So just to dive on into I walked through the agenda a little bit, but we are going to talk about no matter who we are, we all have a shared goal. We are going to talk about how we can achieve that goal, and through that, understanding what is better nutrition. And then the bulk of this conversation will be an interview with Bethany Davis, the Director of Industry and Regulatory Affairs at MegaFood. I've had the opportunity to work with Bethany through the Organic Trade Association Supplement Council, of which I'm a member. And we are going to talk a great deal about why MegaFood went through the glyphosate residue-free certification. Wow, that's a tongue twister. I may mess that one up as we go through it today, but hopefully I'll keep it straight. So we'll be able to talk about that and then also be able to answer your questions. If you do have a question, please leave it in the question box. And as I mentioned, if you're listening to this later, please feel free to reach out to me. And also, if you look in the lower right-hand corner of all of your slides, there will be the opportunity for you, if you are in the United States, to text non-GMO 123, that's all one word, to 44222 to get the free non-GMO guide, which is also going to explain in further detail about the glyphosate residue-free certification that we are talking about today. Okay, so I have the privilege of asking this question of people all the time. What do you actually want? My goal is to help people get better health. And, for a long time, I think when I started asking that question of what do we want, I thought that people wanted different things. And it took me a while also to realize that nobody wants better nutrition. Let's be very, very clear. If we could eat whatever we wanted, if we didn't have to worry about what toxins might be out there or what's in the environment or what's in our flora, like any of this stuff, and we could have and keep better health, we would not be focused on better nutrition. So I think it's really important to start off with that this is not, the end game here is not to deliver better nutrition. The end game is to help people get and keep their better health. And if you happen to be in a place today where you have your better health, you know how valuable it is. You know how it powers you and allows you to do the things that you want to be doing. And if you're in a position today, either working with someone or if you yourself are in need of getting your better health, you know how frustrating and challenging and really all-consuming it can be to understand what are the factors And how do we all put that together to get and keep that better health, but also to go about our lives, our day jobs, our night jobs, our family jobs, all the different jobs that we have. So we're going to talk through that. And I like to show this slide just as like to be kind of funny, which is, there's a lot of focus on aspects of your diet, right? Is it vegan? Is it paleo? Is it dairy free? Should we just give up food altogether? I get a ton of questions on intermittent fasting. Of course, there's this notion of juices. Is it supplements? How are we going to get that better health? And I think that's why, to me, it's so critical that we actually talk about what delivers better health in the body. To do that, before I get into talking about the answer, we're going to just make sure we're all working with the same definitions. So nutrition, what is nutrition? Nutrition are the nutrients that go in and on your body most often. Let's go back to that for a second. Go in and on your body most often. So that notion of in and on is going to be absolutely critical for us, because we know that things that we apply topically, not only do they go right into our body, but they also get absorbed and they don't go through the normal digestive process that the food that we're taking in or the beverages we're taking in. And it's also the notion of most often. So later on, when we start to talk about glyphosate residue free and the certification, it's going to be so important for us to be focusing on what are the behaviors that we do most often. It's why I personally, and as a practitioner, am so thrilled to have a supplement company, because I take my supplements most often. So the notion of having a supplement company that's gone through that certification and as a result having those products is extremely meaningful, probably more meaningful than, say, squash, which is something I might have occasionally, but isn't something that goes in and on my body most often. And so nutrition, what goes in and on your body most often, is going to be what impacts your health. So as we're thinking about this today, and certainly as you're having a conversation with anyone, we need to remind people that your nutrition is not my plate. Your nutrition is not a food guide pyramid. Your nutrition is all of these things: your food, your supplements, your medication, your skincare, fabrics, and of course, what all of those things are washed with, cleaned with, etc. So if we want to actually get that better health, we need to make better choices. We need to have better nutrition. There is no such thing, and I want to make sure we're very clear about that. I am not serving up any sort of perfect option today. I wouldn't say that about this certification. I wouldn't say that about organic. I wouldn't say that about non-GMO. Nothing is perfect, and there's a really valid reason for that. There is no perfect health. The body never achieves perfection. It's striving for it. We may mentally be thinking we could get it. We may even think we've identified a perfect diet, but we actually can't get there. What we want to do is bring in better nutrition, which is comprised of making better, not perfect, choices more often. So what we're talking about today is really how can we do better? And what does better nutrition then look like? Better nutrition, and my hope is that everyone will make sure that they capture this, take it in, and also share it, because if we are all working from the same definition, we are going to do better for everyone. Better nutrition is about the nutrients, giving your body the nutrients it needs without giving it ingredients that can irritate, overwhelm, and disrupt its efforts. Now, there should be a parentheses after without, probably saying without more often giving it ingredients that can irritate, overwhelm, and disrupt its efforts. This is going to happen. The sheer act of living outside of a bubble means that we are going to interact with things that will irritate, overwhelm, and disrupt the body's efforts. The great news is that the body is designed to actually deal with those. The challenge is when we've overwhelmed the body. When the body has too much work to do, just like any of us, if we have too much work to do, we can get irritated, frustrated. We might tuck some of it away into a drawer, and net, we're not going to do all of it better, and we certainly aren't going to feel better about doing all of it. And so one of the things that's going to be really key for us in this conversation today is to understand that we now have a tool that can help reduce that workload for the body. And that's what got me super excited. So at the end of the day, how can we get that better health? That better health is going to be powered by better nutrition, which I've just defined for you as giving the body the resources it needs to run better without giving it what will irritate, overwhelm, and disrupt it. And so that better nutrition is our better total nutrition. So what we are going to focus in on today is how can we help people make better, not perfect choices more often, better quality foods, beverages, supplements, skincare, products that we wash with. I could go on. I do have other webinars that are dedicated to those specific areas. And so if you are interested in more information on a specific area, such as skincare or such as cleaning products, please see the Better Freebies section of my website at thebetternutritionprogram.com, and you will be able to get that content there to watch at your leisure. Okay. This is the part that gets me most excited because for me, as I said, I love figuring out tools, better nutrition tools, ways that I can help people get better health powered by that better nutrition. And for me, it better be doable. It better be simple. It better deliver what their body needs without adding one thing that I know irritates is another item to the checklist. So this is going to be an awesome conversation where we get to dive in deeply with Bethany. So welcome, Bethany. I want to make sure she's here and ready to chat. There she is in where was this photo taken?
That's actually at my aunt's house down on the South Shore of Boston. I think it was around Thanksgiving, maybe more than a couple years back. But yeah, they live right by the ocean. It's beautiful.
It's great. What's great about the way that I set up these slides, I'll just give myself a pat on the back, is that you're looking just like so happily, like, I mean, I'm sure in that moment you were totally enjoying nature, but here you're like looking at the glyphosate residue pre-certification, like, oh, my life has changed for the better. So before we dive into all this, I would love for you to introduce yourself for a moment, explain what you do at Megafood, and I also would like to take a moment for you to explain your personal experience, if you're open to that, your story as it relates to glyphosate and why you're so passionate about this.
Yeah, I would love to. So I've been with Megafood for almost 7 years. It'll be my 7-year anniversary in a couple of weeks. And I kind of fell into the company. I, didn't know that much, honestly, about organic, non-GMO, all these kind of topics when I started. But early on, like early days when I was with the company, I was really into CrossFit, as I am again now, but there was a pretty long break in the middle there when I had kids, but I was really into CrossFit. And one day I couldn't go to the gym and I went for a run in my town to a local park, and it was in the summer and it was a really dry summer. And there was just this one park that had kind of this lush green grass. And so I went for a run, went to that park, did some push-ups and sit-ups and lunges and such. And I don't know if you've ever had an itch in your eye and just kind of gone for it, like really just itched your eye. But that's what happened. I was doing push-ups and my eyes got really itchy, and I kind of itched my eyes, and within seconds they swelled up to like the size of softballs. And I had to kind of pry one of them open so that I could see enough to run back home because I didn't have my cell phone on me or anything. And it turns out, I ended up going to the hospital and my throat almost closed. And I went to the town after the entire incident, which took a week or so to recover from, and asked them what in the world they're using in the town parks, in the city parks. And they told me that all they use in that park was glyphosate. And so that's when I became acutely aware that I have a specific sensitivity to glyphosate. But I've always known that I've had a personal sensitivity to herbicides and pesticides because when I eat produce, I'm like a super taster. Like I can tell you, my mouth will tingle if there's residue of different herbicides and pesticides on food. And so I became really passionate about this issue and learning about where herbicides and pesticides are used in our food supply and in our farming and agricultural systems. And I was able to sort of parlay that passion and interest into more specific work within the company. And so now I work quite a bit on coalition building and on these third-party certifications and public speaking about everything from soil health to herbicides and pesticides. So it's kind of become my career almost.
Well, I'm not happy that it happened to you, but I'm grateful for the expertise that you now bring to it. So I want to back up for a couple of things. It's very important to me that the lexicon, the terms that we're using, that everything is understood. And so please also, if you are listening and you're Bethany's level and, are an expert in this area, bear with us for a moment, because I want to make sure that we're all using the same words and understanding the intention. So when you say you went to the park and they said they used glyphosate, did they say that specifically? Did they mention a product name? How would someone in a similar situation know that they might have a glyphosate sensitivity if in that space?
Sure. They did mention a product name, and I think it's the regulatory professional in me, the risk management professional in me, that maybe is defaulting to using the word glyphosate, because it is branded by a company who is called Monsanto, and they have a product called Roundup. And we tend not to talk about Roundup. We tend to talk about the compound, the chemical compound, the active ingredient that's in Roundup. But glyphosate is essentially, the active ingredient in a product called Roundup, which is used widely in farming, GMO farming primarily, but also in conventional farming. And it's also used in people's homes. It's used in, public parks and school parks, and lots of people have Roundup to keep weeds out of their garden or off their lawn. And so it's pretty omnipresent as far as its availability. My mom, I posted a funny video on my Instagram the other day where my mom was at BJ's, and she said she was walking down the aisle with her buggy. That's what we say in New England if you're over a certain age. And that she saw big plastic containers of glyphosate, of Roundup, and she couldn't believe it. She's like, "That's a poison. I didn't realize that you could just buy it at the store." Mm. And if there's ever been more true evidence that that Bethany Davis is Joan's daughter, it was in that moment, because most people don't think of it. It's all over the place. It's something that's commonly used in people's households and very commonly used in agriculture, and people don't think much of it, but it certainly has downsides to its widespread use.
Yeah, and let's talk for a moment, because there are pesticides, herbicides. We're talking about glyphosate, and then there's also a term, and this term shows up in the certification, which is residue. So why don't we walk through and have you explain each of those as you would, so that we can make sure that our listeners, as we move forward into the conversation, are understanding what we mean by pesticide, herbicide, and their residues.
Sure. So pesticides, herbicides, sometimes fungicides are all essentially tools that farmers have. They're chemical tools that farmers have that they can use for pesticides, control for pests. So if there was, a bunch of bugs eating up their crop, it's something that they can spray that would affect the pest, but hopefully not affect and kill the plant. And the same for herbicides. An herbicide is something that you can spray to get rid of weeds, kill the weeds, but hopefully not kill the plant. And fungicides also will kill fungus. All of these things are kind of considered commonly used and relied upon tools that farmers have, because this is the great outdoors. This is nature. Things happen. And so it's always things that they can leverage to help them be able to make sure that they're producing a crop that survives, isn't destroyed, and is bountiful, so that they can make their living. It's really been in the advent, the last 50 to 60 years or so, that we've got more and more herbicides and pesticides that are commonly in use, and it seems to be more and more commonly, like the first line of defense for farmers. And there are a lot of downsides to that. The upside, it's kind of like it's not to say it's short-sighted, but it can be a quick fix. Yeah. And so a lot of times farming is just so unpredictable and such a hard business that reliance upon some of these quick fixes is important. A residue is basically, the definition of a residue is a small amount of something that remains after the main part's been gone or been taken or been used. So a residue would apply to herbicides or pesticides, but it's basically a small amount of that thing that is left over. So if they were to spray while something was growing halfway through the grow season, and if they were to spray an herbicide or a pesticide all over a crop to control for something, a residue would be what would be left over by the time that food or crop has been harvested and packaged and sold and gets into your home and into your refrigerator.
Wonderful. So now we're going to dive into the meat or the glyphosate residue-free orange of it all. And I want to remind everyone, I just want to bring you back to that definition of better nutrition, because as we talk about residues, there are often times where people will say that residues are less important, or such a small amount, that leftover amount. But what we do know, and there is really good research about the accumulation of residues in the body. And again, our goal in trying to get to that better health, getting it and keeping it, is to reduce the workload that the body has to do. And so having those residues in the body can make things more challenging for the body to do. It's just another piece it has to work with, or it can render something not working, it can disrupt something's effectiveness. So Bethany, tell us a little bit about the story of the glyphosate residue-free certification, how you learned about it, and then we'll get into the process that you all actually went through.
Okay, sure. So the way that we learned about this certification was the way that many people learned about it, which was basically a result of the soft launch that the Detox Project did. They had a couple of bloggers, influencers, that basically teased that this certification was coming to market shortly and would be available. So just like anyone else, I was kind of following, some of the health bloggers that blog around for the natural product space, and I saw it, and immediately I thought to myself, well, we need to take a look at this. It resonated because Megafood's been testing for over 125 different herbicides and pesticides for a decade now. So this has been something that's been important to us for a long time, and we've been doing everything we can to control for these residues in our supply chain and make sure that they're not present. For all the different reasons that we reject lots of product, or a lot being like a group, a batch, say, of a given fruit or vegetable or herb that we might buy from one of our farm fresh partners or any of our other partners in our supply chain. Herbicide, pesticide failures is one of the most common. And so this has been a big thing for us for a long time. And we're also really big on third-party certification, because we believe that if there's a third-party standard and there's auditing and there's testing, that it builds a lot of trust with consumers. It's a really transparent way for us to be able to speak to consumers about what our values are and what's important to us and what they're getting or not getting when they buy a Megafood product. But there's no precedent. This is the first ever third-party certification for an herbicide or pesticide. And so as soon as I saw that, I thought, oh, well, this is a no-brainer for us. And I already knew that we would, be we've had a bunch of glyphosate testing over the years, so I knew that we would be it would be something that would be available to us as a company based on what I knew about how we test. So I basically brought it to the executive team and said, hey, we need to look at this. And the interesting thing about glyphosate testing is that it's really specific. It uses a completely different panel than most of our other herbicide pesticide testing that we do. So to up the amount of glyphosate testing that we're doing was really quite an investment, but it's something that we believe in. And so, yeah, we decided to bring it in. And so pretty much as quickly as we could, we engaged the Detox Project and went about the process of getting certified, which essentially consists of having every lot, like every single one of our products, tested by one of their vetted labs. They partner with a handful of labs that are able to get down to pretty low limits of detection. And so we had to go through one of their labs, which was different than the lab that we'd been using, and get everything tested. So basically we got all the products tested, a lot of each product, and made sure that it was resulting in a non-detectable result at the lowest limit of detection that they could possibly get to at the lab for our product. And once we got there, that basically results in certification, and there's some contracts and some information, things that need to be signed. The Detox Project requires you get initially tested, and then you have to test twice more throughout the calendar year. But where we're testing much more frequently than that. This is something we're putting on our bottle and a promise we're making to our consumers. So especially, some of our lots of product, we're making them once a week. So we're testing really frequently. And so, yeah, basically it's just a consistent test result. That's essentially what's required for this certification in particular, which is different than some other certifications. Some certifications are more philosophical, like a vegan certification is not a test-based certification. We're gluten-free certified, so that's very similar. It's a test-based certification. They're just making sure that on every lot of product we're testing free of. And even glyphosate is something that's banned in organic agriculture. So the fact that we generally source organic ingredients for our products gave us that's one of the reasons that this was an easier certification for us to obtain, because glyphosate's banned for use in organic. So organic farmers cannot and do not use glyphosate. There's other herbicides and pesticides that organic farmers can use, ones that we know more about and know to be not toxic. But there isn't testing as a part of this organic certification. So they're not regularly testing. And so this is just, it's like an extra layer. It's an extra layer, an extra safeguard, an extra data point for consumers so that they can make a wise choice. And for someone like me, it's really important because I know that I have a sensitivity to it.
Thank you. And I moved the slide ahead while we were talking. I want to share while you were talking, I want to share with everyone, I think this is a really powerful slide. Now, again, this demonstrates the U.S. And so one of the other things I want to talk about is that notion of sourcing globally and the certification. That was a question that came to me before as a pre-sent question to the webinar, which is, does the certification help you with ingredients that you're sourcing outside of the U.S.? Before I have you answer that question, I just wanted to walk through what we're looking at here. So this is a map of estimated agricultural use of glyphosate. And so this is just the agricultural use in America, 1992 to 2012. So in 20 years, you can see the changes in pounds, that darkening, the darker color, the rust all the way through to the deep red is exponentially higher. I am happy to also share this slide so that nobody has to get a microscope out and see the differences. But when we look at this, we can understand. Again, we don't have any markers in this country to date, we meaning healthcare practitioners, to say, if you are pregnant, your exposure to residue should be in this range, or if you are thinking of getting pregnant, or if you are a young child, or if you are somebody who is autoimmune compromised, or in the case of Bethany, if you are somebody who has demonstrated a sensitivity to glyphosate, where you want to really be able to avoid it. Since we don't have those markers and we can see this trend, which has only gone on the increase, we see this trend in agricultural use, we can start to understand why it's so important. And Bethany, I wanted to first answer, because I'm just showing the US here and because I need to remember to make sure that we get that question in. So you guys are, Megafood as a company does source products from all over the world, correct? And so how have you applied then? I would imagine you are applying the certification to those ingredients because you're doing it for your overall product.
Yeah, that's true. So a large amount of the produce that we source every year, a majority, in fact, is sourced from US farmers. But there are definitely ingredients that we buy from overseas. And again, buying organic helps and reduces the risk that you're going to find trace amounts of glyphosate, even though it's possible because there's cross-contamination. I mean, it's in the water, it's in the air. So you can find it, especially if the organic farm is located close to GMO or conventional farms. So buying organic helps a lot. And so far we have not had to reject any lots of herbs or vegetables or fruits because we've got glyphosate residues coming back. And I think that has a lot to do with just having those relationships with our suppliers and almost always trying to source organic. So what does help, like it's sort of similar to non-GMO project verification, as a manufacturer who's consistently trying to provide that certification and obtain it for our finished products, there is a pressure that can be created down through the supply chain. And so, you know, when we want to make a product that's Non-GMO Project verified, we look to people who can give us certified ingredients. And so at the beginning of the Non-GMO Project, it really, you know, ingredient companies or, you know, farmers weren't necessarily going through the process of getting certified. It was on behalf of, you know, the brands had to do the work to make sure that the ingredients they were buying were non-GMO and had the right testing and had the right paperwork. And even though this is at the very beginning of the Detox Project's certification program, I would hope that as time goes on, more and more ingredient companies, farmers, and suppliers are going to aim to get the certification, because certainly having that, knowing that somebody's offering that and that they've already tested for it, takes a huge burden off of companies like mine that want to be able to obtain this certification and provide that to their customers. So it's a little bit early days. Luckily, there's a lot of countries that are either have straight out banned glyphosate or in the process of phasing it out. And so there are countries that are almost safe harbor countries for certain types of different herbicides and pesticides, glyphosate included. But it is used globally, and it is the #1 herbicide used globally. And so, you know, time will tell if we're going to trend away from glyphosate, or if it's going to continue to grow over time, because I mean, that's clearly what it's been doing over the last 20 years. But for us, our company cares a lot about soil health, because we recognize the importance of the soil microbiome and how that affects the nutritional value of food. That's all intricately connected, if that's something that you weren't aware of. And so glyphosate is basically a broad spectrum antibiotic. That's how it works. It's a mineral chelator, so it can be applied to a crop, and in the case of GMO crops, those crops have been bred to be resistant to glyphosate, so they'll continue to grow and thrive, but it'll kill everything else. And so it's essentially killing that soil microbiome. So to us, it's really, you know, it's a soil health issue, and we have such terrible soil erosion happening globally. You know, even just having access to nutrient-dense food, the nutrient density of our food has declined over the years because of the way we treat our soils and using antibiotics like this as a part of our regular farming process. So our hope is that informing people about glyphosate, putting it on our label, you know, even if people are like, what does that mean? And they go and Google it, helping people bring some awareness you know, about how frequently and how much of this is used and what it does to our soil, and therefore to people's, you know, nutrient availability and outcomes, will help flip the switch, so to speak. And so we've been encouraging people to ask the people they buy food from, ask the people you buy supplements from, you know, do your farmers use glyphosate? You know, are the glyphosate residues on this? Because the more people that ask those questions, whether it's within our supply chain or whether it's consumers, we're hoping that it'll help apply a little bit of pressure for people to find better ways of managing herbs, managing weeds, than, you know, using this compound.
Awesome. So I knew this was going to happen. We have way more questions than we probably have time for. And the reason for that is I try to keep this, you know, to that 30 to 35 minute sweet spot for people. But I've been sorting through some of the questions. So you started to talk about the supplier one. I'm only going to come back to that if we have time, because I think if somebody is interested in understanding more about the actual process that Mega Food went through and continues to go through, I direct you now to megafood.com. I can also direct you very specifically to Bethany. The Detox Project, who again is that third party that's doing the certification, their information is here as well. Some of the questions that came in, one person said, I'm a healthcare practitioner. I'm going to sum up the question. Non-GMO, so they're concerned that they're confused or will confuse their patients, the difference between non-GMO project verification and glyphosate residue free certification, and why do you need one or the other, or really both?
Sure. So with Non-GMO project certification, what that standard is looking at is, are the seeds that were used to grow this food component GMO or not GMO? It doesn't look at farming practices in any way. So there's no part of the Non-GMO project verification program that looks at whether or not herbicides and pesticides were used. There's no part of it that looks at testing. So it's not a miss. I mean, the Non-GMO project is very specifically focused on what it's focused on, and it does an incredible job of certifying that GMO ingredients aren't used in a given food or product. But simply stated, herbicide and pesticide testing and testing for residues of those is not a part of that program. And similarly, organic does look at herbicides and pesticides, and there are essentially lists of what farmers are allowed to use and not allowed to use. But it's not a common practice to test for them.
Great.
And so, like I said, farmers are doing their best, but there can be cross-contamination issues, either from other farms with water, in transportation, like if something's being shipped in a trailer or a truck where a GMO crop had been shipped, there might be residues still remaining in the truck, things like that, different types of handling. So for us, this covers something that I see as a gap. For people who are concerned and want to know exactly what's in this food that I'm eating, non-GMO tells you a lot, organic tells you a whole lot, but what neither of them are doing consistently is testing.
Great. So, Mary Lee, thank you so much for your questions. You had a specific question about Bethany's training and background, and so I would love, if you're open, to just directly connect you. You can just send me an email to ashleykoff@gmail.com, and I will send over. You can also just respond to any of the emails that you get that you got for the webinar. We did share her title in the beginning, but I'm not going to take that time now. And similarly, a great question about what are permissible herbicides that organic agriculture can use. That's a pretty extensive list. So remember that with the USDA organic program. So it's not a marketing term. It is a government regulated program. The National Organic Standards Board reviews every ingredient that is used every 5 years. So we will go through absolutely every ingredient. And so there are actually some changes to those herbicides that are used in organic agriculture. And also the list is fairly extensive. So I will also just ask you, just in the interest of our time now, it's an awesome question, and not just you, if anyone else is interested in that, couple of recommendations. One, we can certainly get you, direct you to that list specifically. And the other part is you can email me, and of course I can connect you with Bethany for further information there. Melinda, you asked can you tell me if the glyphosate residue-free label also includes the presence or absence of other herbicides? Great question. I asked this one as well. Bethany, the answer is?
The answer is no. So if the glyphosate residue-free program handles and deals with only specifically glyphosate, you will see a little seal on mega food products where we say that it's basically tested free of 125 additional things that we look at. And so we test every lot of product that we release for all of those. But yeah, glyphosate is just dealing with glyphosate. And I think one of the reasons is because if you know the name of any herbicide or pesticide, it's probably Roundup, it's probably glyphosate, and like we said, it's the #1 used herbicide both domestically here in the US and globally. So it seems like a great place to start.
Yeah,
and I'll take, if it's okay, if it's okay with you, Ashley, I'll take 1 second just to make sure that nothing gets catastrophized. There are herbicides and pesticides that are allowed for use in organic products, but some of them are benign, and just because they have a use or a function that could act as an herbicide or a pesticide doesn't necessarily mean it's a toxic chemical. So highly toxic things are totally banned for use in organic, but think about it like if you get ants in your house in the summer and you use a little bit of peppermint oil, literally lemon oil is an approved pesticide for organic farmers. So there's all kinds of different tools and things in there, and just because it's on that list and allowed for use in organic does not mean that it's toxic. In fact, it means the opposite.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And my point in mentioning the the 5 years that we're also always reviewing. And I think one of the things and I say we because I follow the NOSB, the National Organic Standards Boards, very closely. When you review science every 5 years, we learn new things and different, just toxicity or any of these pieces. And so certainly with things like lemon oil, there is a centuries old standard there, but it is also good to know that we're reviewing it. This is another one from Melinda, and I think it's a great question. Just to clarify, Bethany, are you finding that organic is glyphosate free?
Yes, our company's experience so far is that all the organic ingredients that we've been purchasing have been glyphosate residue free to date.
Great.
I'll just, speak for us.
That's wonderful. Okay, and because we had a moment, somebody was, and this was on the retailer side, and I've already directed them over to you specifically, but they were wondering if there was anything that surprised you all as a company when you went through the glyphosate residue certification process.
That surprised me. Well, it is a different type of test than we do. Like, we have a standard panel that we've been using for 10 years. And so what's interesting about some of these tests is that it really depends on the matrix, meaning what type of material are you testing, how low of a limit of detection you can get. So there are validated methods for testing for glyphosate residue, but the level of sensitivity that we could get down to depended, on what type of product it was. And if it had, if there was oil in it, like if we were using an extract that had some kind of an oil, it would be a different level of sensitivity, a different level of detection that was possible than, say, our standard tablet. Same with the powder. So I've learned a lot about just, from a scientific perspective, how that testing works. And it's come a long way just even in the last 3 years. We've gone from being able to test at parts per million all the way down to a part per billion level. And there might be room for it to get even more specific and get a lower limit of detection over time. But learning more about that test and how different labs are able to execute on it, that was one of the learnings for us. And I mean, for me, I'm obviously really interested in glyphosate. And so learning more about what it is as a compound, what it means to be a mineral chelator, literally holding on to minerals in the soil, and so they don't get absorbed up into the plant. Things like that, like learning really the connection between soil health and nutritional value of the food and how that whole process works and that whole microbiome, that's been really fascinating for me. I had to learn more about it because we're out there and, we're talking about this program, we're talking about this herbicide, so I wanted to know everything that I could about it. So that's been a surprising learning for me that I feel like a story that's not really being told that much.
Wonderful. And Mary Lee had one final question. Thank you, Mary Lee, because it allows me to go right into our conclusion. So you asked who provides the glyphosate-free certification. So just a reminder, it's glyphosate residue-free certification.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is done through the Detox Project. The detoxproject.com is there. They are the third-party organization. For simplicity's sake, I did not invite somebody on from them also today. My real goal today was to start this conversation. So again, I am beyond grateful to those of you who both joined us today, as well as those of you who will be joining us at a better time for you in the coming weeks. This is, as Bethany talked about in the beginning, this is a starting point. This is something that this company has invested in as a starting point that hopefully for all of us will have that trickle down impact that you were talking about, where more ingredient companies will do this proactively, both for their own knowledge, which I know many are very interested in understanding, as well as then for the companies that are buying them as part of their recipes for their products. And my effort today was not to make this extremely scientific. I have spent a fair fair amount of time reviewing a lot of the science around this. And what I do is I encourage you to engage with MegaFood, with Bethany, with the Detox Project, with myself. If you have more questions, and certainly if you are someone who is interested in going through this experience for your products or ingredients, as well as for my fellow healthcare practitioners, I think that this is something that as we start to see it out there, MegaFood is obviously making a very they are announcing it. It is on the packages that will be seen. And because of that, it is going to start a conversation with consumers, which is one we are frequently having. And to be very honest, is one I always get concerned about, which is, sort of information overload. Oh, is there another, logo that we need to look at, or another certification? And so the purpose here is to be able to share this webinar at any time with anyone who is asking some of those questions, or to share some of those resources, so that we can really lead the communication to help people more effectively understand what that certification is. And also, to your most recent question, Mary Lee, and also Melinda, to yours, what it is not, in terms of other herbicides, et cetera. And so, again, thank you for joining us. Bethany, thank you so much for your time and for your passion on this, which, as you shared, is certainly driven by your personal experience. And we thank you for being a resource for anyone coming forward that wants to have a conversation. In conclusion, I would also like to remind you, please go ahead and get our free non-GMO guide. That is a consumer guide. We are all consumers. We are all individuals. So it should be a guide that's relevant for you. You are welcome to share it with anyone in your community and your patients. And we hope that will help people make better shopping choices, their better, not perfect nutrition choices more often. So thank you, everyone, again, for joining us. And if you have any questions or there were any issues that you experienced during the webinar, please reach out to me directly at the website, thebetternutritionprogram.com. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.